The damaged alien ship descended through Earth's atmosphere, its hull glowing red-hot as it struggled against gravity. Smoke trailed behind it like a dark banner. The ship was unlike anything humans had ever built. Sleek, almost organic in design, with strange patterns etched across its surface that seemed to shift and move in the sunlight. The vessel crashed in a rice field outside Busan, South Korea. Within hours, military vehicles surrounded the smoking wreckage. Soldiers established a perimeter while scientists in hazmat suits approached cautiously. When the ship's door finally opened, the being that emerged wasn't what anyone expected. Standing just over 5 feet tall, Ambassador Dory had smooth blue skin, 4 arms, and large eyes that reflected light like mirrors. Despite his alien appearance, his movements conveyed exhaustion and desperation. "We need help," were his first words, perfectly translated through a device on his wrist. "My people are dying." News of first contact spread worldwide within hours. Governments scrambled to respond. The United Nations called an emergency session while conspiracy theories exploded across social media. Some people panicked, others celebrated, but everyone wanted answers. 3 days later, Dory stood before the UN General Assembly. Beside him stood Professor Junho, Earth's leading xenobiologist, who had been the first human to successfully communicate with the alien visitor. "I represent the Galactic Concord," Dory explained, his voice steady despite his obvious fatigue. "We are an alliance of 16 species across 300 star systems. For 10,000 years we have built a peaceful civilization." Holographic images appeared above him showing worlds of breathtaking beauty, cities that merged with natural landscapes and beings of all shapes and sizes living together. 6 months ago we encountered something we call the Void Hunters. The images changed to show massive ships, dark and angular, moving through space like predators. They consume everything: planets, stars, entire systems. They leave nothing behind. The assembly watched in horror as a recording showed a beautiful green planet being systematically destroyed. Cities vanished in blinding flashes. Oceans boiled away. Within hours, nothing remained but a dead rock. "We have lost 63 worlds already," Dory continued. "Our best weapons cannot stop them. Our fastest ships cannot outrun them. We are facing extinction." Professor Junho stepped forward. "Ambassador Dory has explained that the Concord has known about Earth for centuries. They monitored us but avoided contact because they considered us—" He hesitated. "Potentially dangerous." Dory nodded. "Your species has a unique history of conflict and violence that concerned us. But now, that very trait may be our salvation." This statement caused murmurs throughout the assembly. "The Void Hunters use technology far beyond even our understanding," Dory explained. "But our scientists discovered something unusual. Human brains process information differently than any species we've encountered. Your neural pathways are uniquely unpredictable." Screens around the room displayed comparative brain scans, alien minds showing orderly, organized patterns while human brains lit up in seemingly random, chaotic ways. "We believe humans might understand the Hunters' technology in ways we cannot," Dory said. "You see patterns we miss. You make connections we cannot imagine." The Secretary General leaned forward. "You're asking us to help solve a scientific problem?" "Yes," Dory replied. "We need your unique minds to find a weakness in the Hunters' defenses." After hours of questions and discussion, the world's leaders conferred. The decision wasn't easy, but it was remarkably unified. When they returned, their answer surprised everyone, especially Dory. "Earth will help you," the Secretary General announced. "But not just with science. If these Void Hunters threaten sentient life, then we will fight them alongside you." Dory's forearms gestured in confusion. "Fight? No, you misunderstand. We are a peaceful people. We haven't waged war in millennia. We seek your minds, not your weapons." The American president stood. "Where I come from, Ambassador, when something threatens your family, you don't just solve puzzles, you stand and fight." For the first time, Dory seemed to truly understand what made humans different from his people. It wasn't just how their brains worked. It was what they were willing to do with them. Perhaps, Dory said slowly. We have more to learn from each other than I realized. 2 weeks after Ambassador Dory's arrival, a joint human-alien research center was established in an underground facility near Seoul. The building hummed with activity as scientists from Earth worked alongside visitors from the Galactic Concord. Dr. Jiwoo sat at her workstation, surrounded by holographic displays showing data streams she couldn't fully understand. Despite being one of Earth's most brilliant physicists, she felt overwhelmed. The Concord's technology was centuries beyond human science. You look troubled, said Dory, approaching her desk. I am, Jiwoo admitted. Your people have given us access to advanced technology, but we're still no closer to understanding how the Void Hunters operate. Dory's mirror-like eyes reflected the dancing lights from the displays. That is precisely why we came to you. Our scientists have reached the limits of their understanding. Across the room, Commander Taewon studied tactical data with military precision. Unlike Jiwoo's theoretical approach, he focused on patterns in the hunters' attacks. Have you noticed something? Jiwoo asked, joining him. Taewon pointed to a map showing the path of destruction across conquered space. They don't always take the most efficient route between systems. Sometimes they make strange detours. Like they're avoiding something? Jiwoo suggested. Or drawn to something else, Taewon replied. That evening, Jiwoo couldn't sleep. Something about the hunter's behavior bothered her. She wandered down to the empty lab and loaded all the data onto one giant display. Star maps, communication patterns, energy signatures, everything the Concord had collected. She stepped back, letting her eyes unfocus slightly. Instead of analyzing each piece separately, she tried to see the whole picture. What are you doing? Asked Kimmy, a young Concord scientist who had entered silently. I'm just looking, Jiwoo said. Not calculating, just seeing. Kimmy seemed confused. That is not an efficient analysis method. Humans don't always work efficiently, Jiwoo smiled. Sometimes we see things precisely because we're not looking directly at them. As dawn approached, Jiwoo suddenly sat up straight. The rivers. What rivers? Kimmy asked, confused. When I was a child, my grandmother took me hiking in the mountains, Jiwoo explained quickly. She showed me how rivers always follow the path of least resistance, curving around hard rock flowing through soft soil. Jiwoo pulled up Earth images alongside the hunter's movement patterns. Look, they move like water, not in straight lines but following some kind of invisible current. By morning, the lab buzzed with excitement. Jiwoo presented her theory to the joint team. The Void Hunters aren't choosing their targets randomly. They're following patterns in space itself, like rivers of energy we can't detect. Commander Taewon added, if we can map these rivers, we can predict where they'll go next. The Concord scientists were skeptical. Their instruments detected no such energy flows. But Jiwoo persisted, working with Taewon to create a mathematical model based on natural patterns from Earth, river systems, tree branches, lightning strikes. When they ran the simulation, it predicted the hunter's next targets with surprising accuracy. How did you see this? Dory asked, amazed. Our scientists have studied this data for months. You relied too heavily on instruments, Taewon explained. Sometimes you need to step back and see the forest, not just the trees. 3 days later, Jiwoo made another breakthrough. She discovered that the hunters' communications used frequencies that changed in patterns similar to Earth's weather systems, chaotic, but following underlying rules. We can use this to create a decryption key, she explained to the team. Not by brute force calculation, but by predicting how the patterns change. Within a week, they had their first breakthrough, intercepts of hunter communications. The translations were rough, but revealed something unexpected. The hunters weren't mindless destroyers. They were harvesting energy to power their massive ships. As the team celebrated this discovery, Commander Taewon surprised everyone with a proposal. Now that we understand their communication systems, he said, we can do more than listen. We can send false information, disrupt their coordination, maybe even create a weapon that targets their systems. The Concord representatives looked shocked. Kimmy spoke first. A weapon? We came seeking understanding, not new ways to attack. Understanding won't be enough, Taewon countered. Knowledge without action is useless against an enemy that doesn't negotiate. The room divided. The peaceful conquered, horrified by talk of weapons. The human team convinced that defense required more than passive measures. Jiwoo stood between them, seeing both perspectives. Maybe there's a middle path, she suggested. Let's keep working on understanding them, but let's also prepare to defend ourselves if necessary. As tension filled the room, an alarm suddenly blared. On the main screen, a message appeared. Void Hunter ships had been detected at the edge of the solar system. They were out of time. The emergency alert echoed through the research facility as everyone rushed to the command center. Large screens showed grainy images of 7 Void Hunter vessels approaching Earth. How much time do we have? Taewon asked, his face grim. At their current speed, less than 12 hours, a technician replied. The Concord Council had assembled via holographic projection. 15 alien representatives from different worlds formed, a semicircle of light, their forms shimmering slightly. Most looked like variations of Dory's species, though some had strikingly different anatomies. This is precisely what we feared, said Minu, the Concord's high speaker. Her translucent skin pulsed with blue light when she spoke. The hunters have followed our ambassador to your world. Then we fight together, said General Park, representing Earth's unified defense forces. Fight? Minu's skin flashed red with alarm. The Conquered doesn't fight. We must evacuate immediately. We can transport your key scientists to safety. Evacuate. General Park's voice rose. This is our home. We don't abandon it. As the argument intensified, Jiwoo noticed Dory standing apart from the others, watching quietly. She approached him. Your council seems eager to run, she said softly. Dory's mirror eyes reflected her face back at her. The Concorde has survived. By knowing when to retreat, we've lost many homes already. But you never tried to defend them, Jiwoo pointed out. Before Dory could respond, the door burst open. A junior researcher rushed in, face flushed with excitement. Dr. Jiwoo, I've analyzed the hunter communication patterns like you suggested. There's something strange. He projected a data stream onto a nearby screen. These aren't attack commands, they're distress signals. The room fell silent. Distress signals? Taewon moved closer to the display. You're saying they're calling for help or running from something, Jiwoo whispered, remembering her river theory. What if they're not predators? What if they're prey? The revelation changed everything. While the military prepared Earth's defenses, Jiwoo led a team working frantically to translate more of the hunter communications. Slowly, a picture emerged of a species fleeing from something they called the Void, a destructive force consuming their home dimension. Meanwhile, tensions between humans and the Concorde grew. During a private strategy session, Taewon discovered the Conquered had withheld critical information. You knew, he accused Minu during the next council meeting. You knew the hunters were refugees. You've had partial translations for months. Minu's skin darkened. We knew they were fleeing, yes, but that doesn't change the fact that they destroy everything in their path. It changes everything, Jiwoo insisted. If they're desperate rather than malevolent, we might communicate with them. Naive, said another council member named Yoon. We tried communication. They responded with destruction. As the debate raged, few noticed Dory slip out of the room. Jiwoo followed him to a secured communication center where he was transmitting data to an unknown receiver. What are you doing? She asked from the doorway. Dory jumped, his 4 hands, quickly terminating the transmission. Updating our people on the situation. Which people? Jiwoo asked carefully. The council? Or someone else? Dory stared at her for a long moment before his shoulders slumped. There are factions within the Conquered. Some of us believe your species represents a greater threat than the hunters. Because we're willing to fight? Because you combine intelligence with aggression, Dory replied. A dangerous mixture. Before Jiwoo could respond, alarms blared again. On monitors throughout the facility, security footage showed a group of Concord scientists forcing their way into the weapons research section. "They're trying to steal our defense prototypes." Taewon's voice came over the intercom. "All security. Personnel to Section 7. Jiwoo looked at Dory, who seemed genuinely surprised. "This wasn't part of your plan?" "No," he said, his voice low. "My faction seeks peaceful cooperation. Others fear what humanity might become with access to our technology." As security forces contained the theft attempt, a new alert sounded. The hunter ships had accelerated suddenly. They would reach Earth within the hour. In the command center, chaos reigned. The Concord Council demanded immediate evacuation. Earth's military prepared for a fight they couldn't win. Accusations flew back and forth about betrayal and deception. Amidst the shouting, Jiwoo stood and slammed her hand on the table. "Enough. While we fight each other, both our peoples face destruction. We need to work together now." She turned to the main screen where the hunter ships loomed larger by the minute. "If they're refugees," she said quietly, "then maybe they're looking for the same thing we are." "And what's that?" asked Minu skeptically. "A way to survive," Jiwoo replied. The room fell silent as the first hunter ship entered Earth's orbit. The Pi. 7 void hunter ships entered Earth's orbit in perfect formation. Their hulls absorbed light rather than reflected it, making them appear like moving holes in space. Each vessel was massive, easily 3 times the size of anything humans had built. In the command center, screens showed evacuation ships launching from the Concord's base. The alien diplomats were fleeing, convinced that Earth was doomed. "They're abandoning us," General Park said bitterly, watching the retreating ships. "Can you blame them?" Taewon replied. "They've seen this scenario play out dozens of times. They know what happens next." Jiwoo stood silently, her eyes fixed on the hunter ships. Something about their movement bothered her. They weren't taking aggressive positions. Instead, they were arranging themselves in a circular pattern high above the planet. "They're not attacking," she said suddenly. "At least not yet. They're setting up some kind of energy network." Dory had remained behind when the other Concord representatives fled. Now he moved to stand beside Jiwoo. "You're right," he confirmed. "This is how they begin the harvesting process. They create an energy net that slowly drains a planet's resources." "How long do we have?" Taewon asked. "Hours, perhaps. No more than a day." General Park turned to her communications officer. "Are the special units in position?" "Yes, General. Awaiting your command." For the first time, Dory noticed the quiet efficiency with which the humans were responding to the crisis. There was fear, yes, but not panic. The military personnel moved with purpose, and even the civilians maintained a focused calm. "You've been preparing for this," Dory realized. "Even while working with us on research, you were building defenses." Taewon nodded. "We hoped for peace but prepared for war. It's what humans do." On the main screen, a new set of signals appeared, smaller ships rising from hidden bases around the globe. 50 vessels, each barely visible against Earth's atmosphere, climbed toward the hunter formation. "What are those?" Dory asked, his voice betraying his surprise. "Project Sentinel," General Park replied with pride. "Prototype vessels built using a combination of our technology and yours." Dory's mirror eyes widened. "That's impossible. You couldn't have adapted our technology so quickly." Jiwoo smiled sadly. "You underestimated us, Dory. When facing extinction, humans become very motivated." The Earth ships approached the hunter formation carefully. They were small and clearly outmatched, but they moved with precision that suggested careful planning. "Commander Taewon will lead the main assault," General Park explained. "Dr. Jiwoo has equipped each ship with a disruption device based on her research into hunter communications." "You're going up there?" Jiwoo asked, turning to Taewon in surprise. He nodded. "Someone needs to coordinate the attack pattern. The disruption signal works better from close range." Before anyone could respond, Taewon saluted and left the command center, heading for his ship. On the screens, the hunter vessels seemed to finally notice the approaching Earth fleet. Energy readings from their hulls spiked dramatically. "They're powering weapons," a technician reported. "All ships, initiate. Protocol Omega," General Park ordered. "Commence transmission." The Earth vessels began broadcasting a complex signal, a modified version of the hunter's own communication patterns. On the monitors, the energy readings from the hunter ships fluctuated wildly. "It's working," Jiwoo exclaimed. "Their systems are trying to process our signal." The Earth fleet split into smaller groups, each targeting a different hunter ship. Instead of firing conventional weapons, they projected focused beams of the scrambled communication pattern directly at the hunter's sensor arrays. Dory watched in amazement. "You're not trying to destroy them, you're confusing them." "Exactly," Jiwoo confirmed. "We couldn't match their firepower, so we're attacking their information systems instead. Think of it as a massive sensory overload." One of the hunter ships began to drift out of formation, its movements becoming erratic. Then, another followed suit. The carefully arranged energy net began to collapse. "Taewon's ship is taking heavy damage," someone shouted. On screen, one Earth vessel was clearly struggling, caught in some kind of energy beam from the lead hunter ship. Systems failing, it began to fall back toward Earth. "He's drawing their fire," General Park realized, giving the others time to complete the disruption. For 20 tense minutes, the battle continued. 3 Earth ships were lost, but the hunter formation had completely dissolved. Their vessels moved randomly, colliding with each other, unable to coordinate their actions. Then, unexpectedly, 6 of the 7 ships began to retreat, accelerating away from Earth with surprising speed. Only the lead ship remained. Its systems, apparently less affected by the disruption signal, it turned its weapons toward Earth's surface. "It's targeting our main transmission array," a technician reported with alarm. Just as the hunter ship prepared to fire, Taewon's damaged vessel rammed directly into its sensor array. The impact wasn't enough to destroy the massive alien ship, but it disrupted its targeting systems. Moments later, the final hunter ship turned and followed its companions into deep space. In the command center, cheers erupted. Against all odds, Earth had survived its first interstellar battle, but Jiwoo wasn't celebrating. Her eyes were fixed on the last communication from Taewon's ship before impact. "They're not what we thought. Follow them. There's something worse coming." In the aftermath of the battle, Earth celebrated an unlikely victory. The Void Hunter ships had retreated beyond the solar system, buying precious time, but Taewon's final message haunted Jiwoo. Despite objections from military leaders, she convinced General Park to approve a dangerous mission. "We need to know what they're running from," she insisted, "or we'll never truly be safe." 3 days later, Jiwoo stood on the bridge of the Aurora, Earth's most advanced ship. Built using salvaged Concorde technology, it was designed for deep space exploration. Beside her stood Dory, who had volunteered to join the mission despite the Concorde Council ordering all their people to return home. "Your people will see this as treason," Jiwoo said quietly. "Perhaps," Dory replied, "or perhaps they'll finally understand what makes humans different." The Aurora's tracking systems followed the energy trail left by the retreating hunter ships. After a week of travel, they found the alien fleet regrouping near a dead star system. "Keep our distance," Captain Somi ordered. "Passive scans only." Through powerful telescopes, they observed the hunters harvesting energy from the star's remnants. Their movement seemed less coordinated than before, still affected by Earth's disruption signal. "This is our chance," Jiwoo said. "Their communication systems are vulnerable. We could try to establish contact." "Contact?" Somi looked stunned. "These creatures have destroyed dozens of worlds. And yet they spared Earth when we showed we could hurt them," Jiwoo pointed out. "That suggests intelligence, maybe even reason." After heated debate, they decided to attempt communication using modified versions of the hunter's own signals. For 3 days, there was no response. Then, suddenly, a single hunter ship detached from the fleet and approached the Aurora. Everyone tensed, weapon systems ready. But the hunter ship maintained distance and began transmitting a signal pattern they hadn't seen before. "It's simpler than their usual communications," Jiwoo noted, studying the data. Almost like they're slowing down for us to understand. Working with the ship's AI, Jiwoo gradually established basic communication. Through simple mathematical exchanges, they built a primitive translation system. Hours stretched into days as the vocabulary grew more complex. What they learned changed everything. The hunters called themselves the Voro. They had once been peaceful explorers until their home dimension began to collapse, an event they called the Unraveling. Fleeing through a rift in space, they found themselves in our universe, their technology barely functioning. Desperate for energy to sustain their remaining population and find a permanent home, they harvested planets, unaware that the worlds were inhabited by sentient beings. Their perception systems worked differently. They hadn't recognized the Concord species as intelligent life. They didn't know, Dory whispered, his mirror eyes reflecting the screen. All this time they thought they were mining uninhabited planets. As communication improved, Jiwoo sent images showing the destruction of inhabited worlds. The Voro signals became erratic, patterns suggesting distress or confusion. Finally, a new message arrived, a request for direct contact. Against Captain Somi's wishes, Jiwoo agreed to meet with Voro representatives on neutral ground, a small moon in the dead system. With Dory beside her, protected only by environmental suits, she waited as a small craft landed nearby. The Voro were nothing like they had imagined. Standing nearly 8 feet tall, they resembled crystalline structures more than biological entities. Light pulsed through their transparent bodies in complex patterns. When they moved, it was with fluid grace despite their seemingly rigid forms. Communication was difficult but gradually improved. The Voro expressed what Jiwoo interpreted as horror at the knowledge they had destroyed sentient civilizations. They explained that the unraveling continued to spread, threatening to eventually reach this dimension as well. When Jiwoo returned to the Aurora, she made a decision that shocked everyone. "We need to bring this information to Earth and the Concord," she said. "Not as separate species, but together. The Voro aren't our enemies. They're refugees, and whatever destroyed their dimension is the real threat to all of us." 3 weeks later, representatives from Earth, the Concord, and the Voro met on a space station orbiting Jupiter. The negotiations were tense, filled with mistrust and grief for worlds lost. But slowly, understanding grew. The Concord offered scientific knowledge. The Voro provided insight into interdimensional physics, and humans contributed something neither of the advanced species fully understood: the ability to forgive and adapt. "Your species surprised us," Minu told Jiwoo privately. "We came seeking your problem-solving abilities. Instead, you showed us something more valuable." "What's that?" Jiwoo asked. "Humanity's true gift isn't your intelligence or even your courage," Minu replied. "It's your capacity for compassion even in the face of destruction. You saw enemies as potential allies when we could only see threats." 1 year later, a joint fleet of human, Concord, and Voro ships began construction of a massive defense system at the edge of the galaxy. Working together, 3 species prepared for the arrival of a threat none of them fully understood. Standing on the observation deck of the New Alliance headquarters, Jiwoo watched ships from all 3 civilizations moving in harmony. They asked for our help, but never expected what humanity would deliver, she said softly. Beside her, Dory nodded. "They sought your weapons or your science. Instead, you gave them hope."